Looking for strategies to help you protect your portfolio in these uncertain times? Visit robblack.com. robblack.com, powered by EP Wealth.
Wild happenings on Wall Street today. At one point in time, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 600. Now it's down 68. Russell 2000 was deep in the red. Now it's pushing the green, up 12 points, up 0.5%. The Nasdaq's kind of sideways. The S&P 500's down 1 point. Gold sits down 119 points, down 2.4%. Bitcoin's down $1,800. I'm going to do a little bit of conversation on that this morning. And the 10-year Treasury sits at 4.29%. The oil markets have been all over the place based on headlines. Iran's considering trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz with a deal with Oman to kind of start becoming a toll booth. I don't know if that's going to fly with the current administration. I don't know if it's going to fly with the European Commission. Tesla leads Mag 7 stocks lower today, down 4.1%. Oil surges after Trump offers no clear timeline to end the war. Card spending at department stores falls as gas station sales surge. Blue Owl private credit is falling after the company is capping major withdrawal requests. Ford sales dipped 9% as last year's tariff-fueled buying set a high bar, and affordability issues weigh. Ford's down 1%, GM's down 3%. SpaceX has filed for an IPO, which I think is going to be a bad thing for the markets in the short term, because they're looking to raise a lot of money, and a lot of retail investors are going to pull money from stock A to put into stock SpaceX. Stock market started April in optimistic fashion yesterday. Growing hope was for a near-term conclusion of the Iran conflict. However, that optimism is being questioned today after President Trump's Thursday night address to the nation seemed more focused on additional strike plans rather than de-escalation. President Trump said that additional strikes are being planned for the next couple of weeks if there is no deal, adding that countries which receive cargo shipped through the Strait of Hormuz should make an effort to keep the route safe. He also explained his reasoning for the campaign, highlighted progress, and noted that the length of the ongoing conflict pales in comparison to past wars that the U.S. had been entangled in. Oil's rallied back to that $110 barrel level. There's some caution being added to the mix ahead of the Easter weekend, which will keep all major European markets and a handful of Asian markets closed from tomorrow through Monday. I'll come back to the initial jobless claims in just a second. I kind of want to take a minute to explain to you, in case you need explaining, I don't think you do, the cost of epic fury. The conflict is no longer just a Middle Eastern headline. It's a domestic financial burden. The Hormuz tax, $4 gallon gasoline. California's at $5.89. It's taken about $10 billion out of our economy so far in 1 month. That cost will grow on a monthly basis the longer this goes on. The grocery emergency, that's also being hit. Fertilizer production costs are rising, hinting at long-term food price hikes. Freight cost, diesel is averaging $5.45 a gallon, so anything shipped in the United States on trucks, the company's going to have to pass the cost directly to the retailer. Shipping cost, marine fuel in Singapore is up 223%. So when you think about something being manufactured in a factory in Taiwan or China, it's going to use fuel. That cost is up, but then they're going to manufacture widgets, and they're going to put the widgets on a truck, and the truck's going to use higher diesel prices. Then they're going to put that load onto a barge or a boat, ship it across the world. That fuel's up 223%. Airlines are cutting estimates. Jet fuel is up 82% to $4.56 a gallon. Nasdaq's down 10% as investors flee from uncertainty of a prolonged conflict. So we're getting hit on the lower leg of the K. Now we're getting hit on the upper leg of the K. The upper leg being the wealthy. They own stocks. The federal deficit's taken a hit. The heavy cost of precision-guided munitions and the deployment of carrier strike groups is bloating the federal deficit. I think Hegseth asked for an extra $200 billion a couple weeks ago. This number's going to be going higher, I'd imagine. Now let's get back to the initial jobless claims for the week ending March 28th. They fell by 9,000 to 202,000 from last week's revised reading of 211,000. What we need to know about this is the initial claims remain near the 200,000 mark, reflecting a low firing environment for workers. The trade deficit widened to $57.3 billion in February from a revised $54.7 billion in January. The February imports grew more than exports, even though February non-fuel import prices increased at a slower pace than non-agricultural export prices. It's kind of wonky. Taking a look at the year-to-date. Brent crude's up 74% year-to-date. Silver's up 3%. Gold's up 9%. Bitcoin's down 24%. Magnificent 7's down 10%. Nasdaq's down 6%. S&P 500 down 4%. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 3%. I was close to putting money to work yesterday, and now I'm going to have to take a look at it again today and or Monday. Maybe 2 Mondays from now. Who knows? Not allowed to talk about it. The war premium on oil looked like it was coming off Wednesday. Speculation building for peace in Iran. Crude fell below 100. Now it's back towards 110. Raising hopes that it would mark the start of a round-trip journey back to pre-war levels. Stocks got excited. Energy dropped 4%. Markets rallied 4 to 5% on Tuesday. Energy was just one of 2 S&P 500 sectors to finish in the red yesterday. Oil has functioned as a leading indicator for stock prices. When crude goes up, gas prices follow. That acts as a tax to the consumer. Disposable income comes under pressure. People start talking about recession. Media headlines make it worse. When the geopolitical noise winds down, it seemed to be happening. And even today, Iran's starting to say, okay, we're not going to win this. Well, we're not going to play this with the United States, but we could figure out other ways to make that shipping lane open because it's super important. Iran needs the money. They need to sell oil to the world. Europe needs cheaper fuel. The United States has let Russia start exporting oil again and gas. And that's going to give Russia billions of dollars to start throwing right back into their war efforts. This is a mess. The next several weeks remain up in the air. The Strait of Hormuz isn't open completely for business. Iran and the U.S. officials continue to exchange claims about next steps, not on the same page. Today, we're seeing United Airlines down 5%, Southwest and Alaska down 4%. Higher fuel prices for longer. A handful of firms also lowered their prices on stocks of United Airlines, Southwest, and Alaska. Cruise stocks are falling for the same reason. Norwegian Cruise Lines and Carnival tumbling 5%. 2 worst performing stocks in the S&P 500. Blue Owl down 5%. Their technology income, a non-traded business development company, saw redemption requests increase by more than 40% in the first quarter. They've capped it at 5%. So whether they like it or not, wealthy clients get into private credit. They know the terms of the deal. You can't be pulling money quickly. There's only windows to pull money, and there's only so much you're allowed to pull. And when you see 40% people want their money back, or 40% of the money wants to come out, and they're capping it at 5%, I'm not going to say that implies 2 years of these kind of headlines, but it's certainly not 1 quarter. Wealthy clients complain because they see the headlines to their advisors. The advisors say, okay, it's no skin off my back. Let's pull the money. They put in the request. And if they really want $100,000, they request $500,000 because other clients may want it. And they know that they're only going to get allocated a percentage. So these numbers are a little tough to follow. Micron and SanDisk are down 3%. Micron's down 3%, SanDisk down 1%. Mizuho reiterated an outperform on both stocks. Lumentum's up 5%. Coherent's up 3%. Oops, excuse me. Let me change those numbers. Lumentum's up 3%. Coherent's up 2%. The optical networking companies look to add to gains. Stocks seem to be moving in tandem, if you will. Supermicro is a super weird stock. They basically build AI servers. They got caught up in some headlines of smuggling chips into China. He's pleaded not guilty to charges in New York court. The headlines just keep getting weirder, though, on the charges. Space stocks are ripping higher. Topsy-turvy day. A lot of headlines here. Amazon is in talks to buy Globalstar, which provides voice and connectivity services from its satellite network. Can't hurt that the headlines are excited about the launch of the Artemis 2 rocket yesterday. That was fun. NASA puts on a good show. They put it on YouTube and they put it on their own stream and they introduce you. And now, let's meet the astronauts. And they've got all this pre-recorded glamour. It's a nice moment not to be a Republican or a Democrat in this world. Let's get a big rocket in the air. It's orbiting the United States, right? Or not, orbiting the Earth and the United States. But it's going to start its trek towards the moon soon. I'm excited. I'm nervous, though, too. I don't know why I'm nervous. But back to EchoStar and Globalstar. EchoStar is seen as a backdoor play into SpaceX and Rocket Labs, or higher. EchoStar ticker symbol SATS, Rocket Labs RKLB. Now that Jeff Bezos is getting serious about space services, that could complicate the plans of the two largest commercial space launch companies. Globalstar's up 11% on that talks with Amazon to potentially buy the satellite group. The two companies are negotiating the details of a potential deal after lengthy talks. There is some complications. Apple owns 20% stake in Globalstar. There's going to have to be a negotiation between Apple and Amazon for the latest deal talks to proceed. Amazon, though, has ambitions to compete with SpaceX to provide satellite-based internet access anywhere on the planet, a market that's dominated by Starlink at the moment, and a key pillar of the eye-watering $1 trillion valuation SpaceX is seeking. If Amazon was able to put satellite services anywhere in the world, they could do Amazon Prime anywhere in the world. They can give people, they can sell them internet. They can sell Amazon Prime as a package where you get the internet and TV and free delivery and it's quite the package. It's quite the package. Let's take a break here. I'll come back with another good segment for you with lots of insights, key observations, market updates. Speaking of taking a break, this weekend, Super Mario World movie comes out. Speaking of taking a break, good chance to get a free beer. Pints and Portfolio coming up. It'll be very social, I promise. Saturday, April 18th, 11:30 to 1:30 in Sunnyvale, California. If you're essentially 50 plus and heading towards retirement, this is an ideal event for you. It's a good chance to find out what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong in the world of retirement planning, wealth preservation. Afterwards, one of my two CFPs, Ryan Ignacio or Julie Jan O'Rourke, will give you a preliminary plan. They'll collect some documents from you either at the location or through a secure digital link and schedule a 30-minute Zoom meeting with your in-person meeting to tell you what sort of shape you're in. Sign up for that at robblackshow.com. That's robblackshow.com.
Join Rob Black in Sunnyvale Saturday, April 18th for Pints and Portfolios, a less formal event at a local watering hole for those close to retirement with $500K or more in investable assets. Drop by from 11:30 to 2 for a little sunshine and a complimentary preliminary financial plan from a CFP that Rob trusts at EP Wealth Advisors. Whether you're on the road to retirement or already there, this preliminary plan can provide you with a second opinion analysis of where you are and highlight areas for improvement and opportunities for growth. That's Saturday, April 18th in Sunnyvale. Go to robblackshow.com and click the Events tab. Find Pints and Portfolios and click to register. You'll answer a few simple questions about your situation, and your confirmation email will provide all the details on the location of this Sunnyvale event and how to schedule your preliminary financial plan. Space is limited and registration is required, so go to robblackshow.com today. That's robblackshow.com. Investments not FDIC insured. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Not an offer to sell or a solicitation to buy any security. Member FINRA SIPC.
Some news that has come out as the morning has continued is that Iran and Oman are drafting protocol to monitor the Hormuz Strait traffic. Tanker traffic through the key oil transit route should be supervised and coordinated with two countries, said Iranian official Kazim Karabadabi. U.S. stock indexes were sharply lower, and then they reversed course, suddenly almost going into the green on this news. Tanker traffic through the key oil shipping route is problematic. So trying to get two countries to monitor it would keep Iran honest. The strait, a vital artery for much of the world's oil transit, has been effectively closed since the war started on February 28th with the United States and Israeli strikes on Iran. Iran did say, of course, these requirements will mean restrictions, but rather to facilitate and ensure safe passage and provide better services to ships that pass through the route. So will this be enough for the Trump administration? I think what's going to be the deal breaker for the Trump administration is that the elections are coming soon. 6 months, and the Republicans are not in good shape for re-election and potentially losing control of Congress. I don't think the current administration wants that. So the grocery price shock is going to start hitting soon as fertilizer costs are rising. The next 3 to 6 months, farmers are planting crops now. And again, with the elections coming up in 6 months, rising grocery prices in the U.S. as a result of the Iran war could be the most politically damaging outcome to the conflict just months before the critical election. 2 years earlier, Trump won re-election after hammering the high cost of eggs, bacon, and other grocery store staples. Now he and the Republican Party may be faced with even higher food prices as they try to retain control of Congress in this year's midterms elections. Food faces a number of new inflationary pressures due to the Iran war. The increase in oil costs is raising the price of diesel. That's necessary for farmers and the trucks and the railroads that carry food across the country. Fertilizer is also being choked by the closure of the strait. And even plastic, a petrochemical product that's commonly used in food packaging, could also contribute to higher checkout costs. The cost of food is going to move quite a lot, said one economist and professor at the University of Minnesota, Kachel Schlechen. That's a tough last name to say. He said if you put these things together, that's a big chunk of the price of producing food, and that the price increases a lot, suggesting that the increased price of fertilizer is going to be passed through to food. Like I said earlier, when you increase the price of oil, you increase the price of diesel. That's the truckers. When you increase the price of oil, you increase the price of shippers. Now, in this case, we're not going to be shipping a lot of fruits to ourselves, but when we need bananas from the southern hemisphere, it's going to be more expensive. And then we take those bananas and put them on a truck, it's going to be more expensive because of the diesel. It really does hit in odd, interlinked ways that just stinks. United Airlines stock is tumbling as Trump signals a longer war. So United's down 4%. Southwest is down as well. Delta down. JetBlue down. American Airlines down. Their fuel costs have already spiked. But now they're getting it hit. And this is going to show you how the stock market works too, because United Airlines, part of their earnings profile shows up in the S&P 500 earnings expectations for the year. So TD Cowen is cutting the price target on United Airlines to 120 from 140, keeping it as buy. But they're lowering their estimates for the big 6 U.S. airlines, with fuel looking likely to remain elevated versus prices previous. Jet fuel prices are up about 70% since the start of this war. Tesla delivered 358,023 vehicles in the first quarter, short of expectations. Analysts polled by FactSet had expected about 380,000. They pulled in 358,000. Shares extended losses in the market today, falling 4%. Intensifying competition in China and flailing public perception over Elon Musk's involvement with the Trump administration have not helped. OpenAI closed a $122 billion funding round, bringing its valuation to $852 billion ahead of a possible IPO. The company says it's generating $2 billion in revenue per month compared to $1 billion per quarter in 2024. That doesn't sound all that impressive to me. Allbirds, once valued at $4 billion, sold its assets to American Exchange Group for $39 million. The shoes were popular. My spouse loved them in college, and she was stoked to see them come back. Attempts at diversification, including workout gear, underwear, and other types of shoes, failed to take off. China's developed a robotic arm that could one day remove space debris and enable satellite servicing and refueling. That's pretty cool. Again, China's beating the United States. You know, they say AI is going to take jobs. In this case, it did. The New York Times cut ties with a freelance journalist after discovering he used AI, which borrowed closely from another publication's work, to write a book review. Christine Lagarde used an audience of high-level group of 7 officials to challenge Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's optimism that the Iran war's economic fallout will be short-lived. If this had lasted 2 weeks or under, it would have been short-lived. Bessent has played part of damage control in the recent weeks about the fighting in the Middle East. He's arguing the disruptions, including the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz, will be temporary, asking not to be identified, revealing confidential discussions. So he's out there talking about it. And his own advisors are leaking the information. The European Central Bank president pushed back Christine Lagarde, who I really like. She told Bessent and the central bankers that finance and energy ministers convened at Monday's G7 video call that the effects would be felt for a long time because so much has already been destroyed. The confrontation between Bessent and Lagarde reflects growing tensions between the U.S. and Europe, which is vastly more exposed to soaring energy prices and shipping disruptions triggered by a conflict it didn't start. The economic pain is already being felt. Data showed euro area inflation jumped in March by the most since 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. Governments in the 21-nation currency bloc are slashing their outlooks, hoping that what they envisioned as a year of recovery didn't end up. Instead, it's looking like recession. Lagarde has been sounding the alarm. The ECB's severe scenario, based on acute energy supply disruptions persisting until late 2026, are significant, pushing inflation potentially up to 6.3%. Anything above 3% is unacceptable. It hurts economies. It hurts lower incomes. It hurts middle class. And in this case, it's starting to hurt the wealthy because their markets are falling apart. SanDisk stock has nearly tripled in a record quarter. That's right. In 90 days, you could have got a triple. An AI-driven run on flash computer memory has driven up prices on all sorts of consumer electronics. That's bad news for you, but it's good news for SanDisk. There's a hardware review company called Tom's Hardware, and they're like, don't even think about buying a computer now with DRAM prices being what they are. Consider a monitor versus a new computer. These monitors don't have as much exposure to DRAM. SanDisk reports its third quarter earnings on April 30th. Most analysts expect the memory shortage to last through 2028. So you got a couple years on this play, especially on pullbacks. SanDisk's record quarter comes even after a bumpy end to March. The company's shares took a double-digit free fall last week as investors digested the news on Google's AI researchers cracking the code on an ultra-efficient AI memory compression algorithm. And people got it wrong. They thought that was going to cut the demand for DRAM because Google's come up with this technology that makes running large language models more efficient. The truth is it's going to create more companies and enterprises getting into AI. Optimism around Bitcoin's trajectory is fading following Trump's address. Whales continue to offload. Bitcoin squeaked out a positive finish for March, up 1.8% after 5 consecutive months in the red, but optimism has quickly faded. Google Research came out yesterday with something else that's going to upset people in the world, and this time it's Bitcoin owners. Quantum computers will be a serious threat to the 6.7 million Bitcoins, including Satoshi's coins. Their fastest clock architecture could crack a private key in 9 minutes, while Bitcoin blocks take 10 minutes on average. The change that the threat model entirely. Your cryptocurrency won't be safe, according to Google, when quantum computing becomes mainstream, or in some cases, well-funded. Google showed a 20-fold reduction in the amount of resources needed by a quantum machine to break the cryptography back in blockchain networks. The researchers recommended beginning the migration process to post-quantum cryptography immediately. And finally, the S&P 500 just had its worst quarter in years. Let's talk about some of the winners and losers. The market has been rattled by soaring oil prices. At the top of the table, obviously, SanDisk. At the bottom was software adjusted names. Software as a service apocalypse. It's been pretty rough. The energy sector has been a big winner. It posted its second best quarter on record, obviously, again, tied towards oil. But you saw Apache, APA up 74%, Occidental Petroleum up 58%. Back to software, Salesforce was down 30% in the quarter, Adobe down 31%, Workday down 40%, Trade Desk down 40%. I've got a Pints and Portfolio coming up. I'd love to meet you. Have a good, entertaining day with some infotainment thrown in so that you get a better understanding of where you stand in your retirement planning, your financial wealth, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. I bring 2 CFPs with me. We do a preliminary plan that includes a Monte Carlo scenario after the event because we're going to be drinking beers. 'Cause I'm buying in this market. Take me up on that one. Sign up for the event, Sunnyvale, California, April 18th, 11:30 to 1:30 at robblackshow.com.
For more information about EP Wealth, visit robblack.com. That's robblack.com.
Inflation, fears about AI's impact on jobs, and increased longevity. They've pushed expectations higher for a magic number. When I say magic number, how much more money do Americans say they need to retire this year since last year? 1 million is not enough. I'll give you a clue. The magic number to live a comfortable retirement, it's jumped. Americans now believe that they will need to retire comfortably. More doleros climbed 1.46 million in 2026 from 2025. That's $200,000 more than what people thought last year because there was inflation. There's more stories about increased longevity, and there's fears about the impact of artificial intelligence on jobs, raising financial anxiety. This is according to a study by Northwestern Mutual, which comes out every year. Americans' heightened expectations for how much they'll need for retirement come as actual retirement savings remain a fraction of that goal. 46% of Americans said that they don't expect to be financially prepared for retirement. SpaceX today filed confidentially for an IPO. This is the next step on what is expected to become a blockbuster summer listing. Elon Musk's satellite and rocket company could raise $75 billion in an IPO that would value the company at more than $1.75 billion. $1.75 trillion. That's absurd. Raising $75 billion is a lot of money. Valuation of $1.75 trillion, both records for IPOs. And the exact amounts won't be settled until it goes public, likely in June. Another notable thing about this IPO is the portions of the shares committed to individual investors is expected to be much higher than traditional IPOs, up to 30% from the typical 10%. Musk is lobbying to get it included in the S&P 500 day one and into a lot of fund holders' hands, mutual fund holders' hands, instantly. That'll cut down on the float, increase the odds of it moving higher. He's got a lot of tech bros who want to be him vicariously through stocks that he manages. Now, that retail investors part is a move that could broaden retail participation in one of the most anticipated public offerings ever. 4 astronauts are going to bravely go where no man has gone before. Well, they've gone to the moon. They just haven't gone that far. NASA's Artemis 2 mission is expected to lift off from Kennedy Space Center today around 3:24. It's probably already happened if you're listening to the radio show. But if you're listening to the podcast, it might not have happened. Carrying 4 astronauts on a journey around the moon, a historic and risky lunar venture. First time astronauts have returned. This is the first time astronauts have returned to that vicinity in 50 years. It's a mission critical test as we plan to eventually go back to the lunar surface later in the decade. Of note, NASA brings us a lot of technology like memory foam, scratch resistant lenses, cameras that are now used inside of Apple's iPhone, water purification systems, digital watches. They couldn't count on mechanical watches back in the 60s. Gravity kind of messes up that tick and the talk. So they invented the digital wristwatch. Interesting stuff. So that trip to the moon, if it goes well, it can help a lot of stocks. So that's interesting to note, would you not say? They will ride on an Orion spacecraft built by Lockheed Martin, ticker symbol LMT, Northrop Grumman, L3 Technologies, and Honeywell. The spaceship sits on top of NASA's roughly 320-foot tall SLS rocket. The Statue of Liberty is about 305 feet tall. I get nervous. I was in high school when the spaceship, was it Columbia? Blew up. People were watching Sally Ride's going to the space. Oh, no. So there's some publicly traded companies that will benefit. Some other ones, some smaller ones. Mini SpaceX Rocket Labs, ticker symbol RKLB. Communication provider AST Space Mobile. Lunar lander maker Intuitive Machines. Firefly Aerospace. They make rockets and lunar landers. Component supplier Redwire, ticker symbol RDW. A lot going on. Eli Lilly's stock today jumped as the weight loss pill enters the market. Wow. You can now take a fat pill, as Trump once called it. Eli Lilly's stock up 3.7%, rallied after the FDA approved the company's oral obesity medication, which will become available through Lilly's direct-to-consumer online pharmacy this month. The once-daily pill sold under the brand name Foundeo will be available through Lilly Direct with shipping starting April 6th. Doses will start at $25 a month for patients with insurance coverage and $149 for those who pay out of pocket. That's pretty cheap. Foundeo will be available through U.S. retail pharmacies and telehealth platforms at a later date. So doing the direct-to-consumer first. Novo Nordisk down 0.5% today. There's more conclusion in the months of clinical trials and regulatory strife. It marks a significant escalation in the battle for dominance in the weight loss drug market, of which I noted that Lilly came out with a study and they said, if you have an addiction to alcohol, our pill actually does really good work. Our study is finding on that. And we've talked about this in the past about addictions to drugs, very big markets. And it's setting Lilly up for keeping these drugs on the market for 10 years because they're not asking for FDA approval on that. They're just doing weight loss. Novo Nordisk just got approved for cardiovascular disease in another market. When you get add 100 million new users, it's a big thing. Alcohol and drugs, very big thing. Lilly, the first drug maker to join an elite class dominated by tech firms of $1 trillion mark, hovered around $869 billion today. Meanwhile, Novo Nordisk's market cap is around $158 billion. The launch of Foundeo is another victory for the pharmaceutical giant. I like Lilly more than Novo, but I guess you could say I don't even like Novo. Novo suffered a setback in February when its experimental obesity shot CagriSema failed to outperform Lilly's tirzepatide in a study. Legal AI startup Legora hits $100 million in annual recurring revenue. This is a big story. Legora is a Swedish startup chasing Harvey's lead in selling artificial intelligence software to law firms. It's hit $100 million in annual recurring revenue, a milestone that shows law firms are willing to spend serious money to retool how lawyers work. If you were thinking of going into law, getting your law degree right now, your ability to be a junior lawyer is shrinking because of AI. Legora told Business Insider exclusively that it went from $1 million to $100 million in annual revenue run rate in less than 18 months. That's impressive. Legora now serves over 1,000 customers, including Cleary Gottlieb, HSF Kramer, White & Case, and Linklaters. Stock market's in for a choppy, bumpy ride in 2026, so says one strategist. Stay invested because what you saw yesterday, that's how fast the markets can move. 2-day moves in the market can be significant. Investors may want to brace themselves for some more dramatic swings. Now is still a good time to be taking risk, but realize it's going to be choppy risk. In the past 2 decades, 6 of the market's 10 best days happened within 2 weeks of its 10 worst days. The second worst day of 2020, March 12th, was immediately followed by the second best day of the year. Don't try to time the market. Keep time in the market. And Nike stock is in the penalty box after an earnings beat. The Beaverton, Oregon footwear maker posted fiscal third quarter earnings of 35 cents. Their earnings were fine. Their revenues were fine. What was problem was that they didn't say great things about the future. And they said it's going to be, maybe we're in the middle of the innings of turning this thing around. Wall Street punished them. Stock's at an 11-year low, down 11+% today. Find me online at Rob Black Show. Don't forget I have a Pints and Portfolio coming up in April. That's this month, about 15 days from now. Sign up at robblackshow.com. That's robblackshow.com.
Join Rob Black in Sunnyvale Saturday, April 18th for Pints and Portfolios, a less formal event at a local watering hole for those close to retirement with $500K or more in investable assets. Drop by from 11:30 to 2 for a little sunshine and a complimentary preliminary financial plan from a CFP that Rob trusts at EP Wealth Advisors. Whether you're on the road to retirement or already there, this preliminary plan can provide you with a second opinion analysis of where you are and highlight areas for improvement and opportunities for growth. That's Saturday, April 18th in Sunnyvale. Go to robblackshow.com and click the Events tab. Find Pints and Portfolios and click to register. You'll answer a few simple questions about your situation, and your confirmation email will provide all the details on the location of this Sunnyvale event and how to schedule your preliminary financial plan. Space is limited and registration is required, so go to robblackshow.com today. That's robblackshow.com. Investments not FDIC insured. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Not an offer to sell or a solicitation to buy any security. Member FINRA SIPC.